I'm Ryan Logan, and you're listening to Elm Street Radio.
Oh my god, what is this? What happened? Did hell freeze over? Because it looks like Elm Street Radio is back. Welcome everybody to Elm Street Radio. It is Diandra here.
And I am Paige.
And we are back from the quote-unquote dead, kind of.
What?
We've been revived by the dream demons. This year.
We're escaping the boiler room. We're escaping the boiler room, and we are back and ready to record.
It's like a dream within a dream. 2020 was like the real, like, in-depth dream, and now we're kind of in the second phase of it, I guess, with some hope. Some hope. Yeah.
Yes.
But what have you been up to, Paige, during 2020? Give me a recap.
I have just been basically editing FredHeads, and in between that, like, reconnecting with my spirituality and just super trying to be on this, like, self-improvement kick and doing the work. What about you?
Yeah, got super into TikTok. Then went through a bit of my own personal renaissance toward the end of the year, really trying to do some personal growth, because my whole spirit took a big hit in 2020, and I just felt not myself. And then just the big event at the end of the year, especially, it's just a lot more self-love, a lot more figuring out what I want to be, and kind of you following your footsteps with connecting with Aphrodite, who has been like, she's been like really helpful for me.
That excites me.
Yeah, that's been
okay,
so great. Been a lot of self-love, and that's just been terrific. So I think everybody needs some time to just figure out what's important in life, because once everything gets lifted, it's go time. I mean, we can have go time now, but it's not 100% go time until we're kind of free from this, and then we could just, I hope everybody goes to live their life, because there's so much going on out there.
That I learned in 2020 is that there was so much negative and so much bad that happened, but through, like, reconnecting with spirituality and meditating and all of that, I've learned to try and look at, like, what the good and positive is in every situation. And I think 2020 is just a year of awakening for everybody. And I think that whether you're waking up to what's going on in the world, or your personal life, or your work, or your school, whatever it is, 2020 has showed us that we need to be awake, and we have to figure out what it is that we want and what's important to us. And I think that you're on this launch of this amazing thing, and I can just feel it, and it just makes me so exciting. But I feel like we all the negative that we saw in 2020, let's move into 2021 looking that, now we know what to do. That job, you can work from home just fine, right? You don't want to spend extra money and go out and do all this stuff. You can save your money and not spend extra money. I think it's a year of self-growth for everybody.
It really is, and I do hope that people really carpe diem, every day, henceforth, because you just never know. I mean, the virus takes a lot of people's families have been hit by it, a lot of people's personal health, not being able to travel, see friends. I mean, it's been a year of our different kinds of Freddys, and I'm just very hopeful for the future, more so this year than last, probably because last year I felt like, okay, we got 2 years of this, that's a lot ahead of us, but now that we're in 2021 and things are coming along, I'm a lot more hopeful, and I hope everybody else is too. I really am concerned for a lot of businesses and people, because this is just, a lot of our world was not built for this, because I don't think a lot of people expected it to happen. So
right, exactly.
Yeah. But speaking of spiritual advisors and being pretty awesome and kicking tons of butt, Our guest for this episode is Ryan Logan, aka Old Man Logan, who is a fellow ginormous FredHead. And he's kind of the reason that we're doing this episode is because he's been watching Freddy's Nightmares. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about Freddy's Nightmares. And just you know, the series is very interesting in itself. And so please welcome Ryan to Elm Street Radio. Welcome, Ryan.
Yay!
Hey, what's going on, everyone?
Oh, man.
How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, Had a pretty calm few days off back, which doesn't really happen for me, but yeah, it's been nice.
So, Ryan, what got you into watching Freddy's Nightmares now in particular?
You know, it's honestly just wanted to go back and binge it all and watch it. I remember watching it, man, when it all aired back in the height of Freddy Mania, which that was like 87, 88. So I was 7, 8 years old. And I had this babysitter that probably shouldn't have let me stay up to watch it, but it was obviously okay because I was watching Elm Street movies anyways. The 80s were weird like that. But yeah, I really wanted to go back and watch it. And I find that I'm confusing a lot of episodes with each other because they're very strange.
Yeah. Did you ever, Paige, did you watch it when it was kind of like before now? Did you see it? I think it was on the Chiller channel or before that time?
No, so I was a kid. I was probably like 4 or 5 years old when it first came on. And I remember it being scarier to me than the actual films because it was like Freddie was talking to you through the TV. And so for me, like, it was really hard for me to watch it. And then when I was in like high school and I was making my own money, I would go to like Suncoast and buy VHS tapes. And they had like the Freddy's Nightmare like 3-pack. And I bought it and I was like, wow, this is the stupidest show I've ever seen in my entire life.
It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad.
I didn't watch it since. And then my husband, he has the DVD set, and like 2 years ago, he's like, let's watch it. And I was like, okay. So I put it on, and I was like, yeah. And then I watched the first episode for today, just in preparation, but I didn't really like watch it. I think for me, it's because I'm not a Freddie fan. And so he's the crypt keeper and he's the star and he's this, but I'm not like a Freddie fan. So because maybe each episode is it's 30 minutes, you can't get invested into the characters like you can in a full film. So for me, I don't know, like I joke around that I want to like this show so much. So I'm so excited that like Ryan's here because like Ryan, I know, loves it. And Dee, you're a fan of it, right? Like, because you've watched it now since having stuff. You've seen it, right?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of episodes. I watched it when it was on Chiller. It was before Dee when it initially aired, but I watched quite a few episodes on Chiller. I've seen them on like Daily Motion. I have the little Blu-ray set, which I no longer have a Blu-ray player, so I haven't had a chance to make my way through all the episodes, but they are really weird, and I just have such a hard time getting into it because they are so strange, and I like anthologies. Like, I really like Tales from the Crypt, but this does not have the story nor the visual quality that does. It just doesn't stick with me. I don't like it that much.
It's hard to get through, and I mean, it doesn't even have the visual quality that the Elm Street movies have. It's pretty bad. Some of it legitimately looks like it was shot on a home camera. Like, yeah,
that's what I realized today. Like, watching it,
yeah,
I was like,
some of it looks really bad.
I was like, this is so cool. Like, you get to see the Nightmare on Elm Street 4 set because it's not lit properly.
Yeah.
It's like walking in with like a bunch of like fluorescent lights on in the Nightmare 4 set. Like, oh,
yeah, it's
okay,
like half of it's lit with a red light and the other half is lit with a green light, and you're like, oh, okay, this is scary.
I was like halfway tempted to like. I was like looking in the back. I was like, "Is Rennie Harlan gonna walk past and be in a shot?" And not realize
Tuesday, your
it?
buttocks is so nice, Tuesday. Oh, but yeah, I mean, I like seeing some of the, because there are a bunch of GIFs out there from Freddy's Nightmares, like Freddy playing the guitar, and so some of those are fun. Some of his little
just
moments
watched
are
that one.
entertaining.
Oh man, they're hysterically awkward and bad and fun. If that makes it. I mean, if you like if you can get on board with B movies like Night of the Demons.
Oh, I love Night of the Demons, but it's still better than this.
Right. But it's like that B movie feel and budget where you're just like, wow, okay.
Yeah, it's not great.
And you know what? It wasn't destined to do well because it was up against SNL because it was on at like 11:30 at night on Saturdays on Channel 7. So
and then didn't they syndicate it too? They like syndicated it in the afternoon after a while, and
did
like
they
were
really?
airing it. Yeah, because they were like airing it in the Bible Belt like at like 3 p.m. Because like certain channels had the rights to it, and so they were like there was a bunch of like uproar over it. I think for me, I think I would be into it if it was streamable, like if it was streaming somewhere.
I do remember that being on in the daytime because that's when they would have the commercials for the Freddie hotline. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, the 1-800-Freddie.
Oh no, it wasn't an 800 number. It was a 900 number.
I'm thinking of a contest.
A lot of trouble. I got in a lot of trouble for racking up the phone bill when I was a little kid calling Freddie. Yeah, not even gonna lie, it was me.
I'm playing a little song on my sad little violin because I never had this experience. I didn't really get to experience Nightmare until, YouTube era came out, 2006. Of course, that's when I became a fan, 2006, 2007. And so I didn't get to have that excitement of watching Freddy on TV, but I did have the internet, so I got to Google it all and YouTube it.
Right.
And that was nice. Still doesn't have the same kind of appeal, though, so I did not get to call Freddy. I hope somebody brings it back. It would be nice if Shudder got the rights to it. I mean, come on. That would be great.
Fantastic.
That
it was just
Friday
a bunch of pre-recorded messages of Robert just hamming it up.
We have some for our documentary.
Do you really? Oh my god.
Little spoiler alert.
I can't wait to see this.
Yeah, so we have a bunch of them because like you, several others have talked about this, about how the height of the Freddy mania and how during the time of Freddy's Nightmares, he was like constantly running contests during Freddy's Nightmares because I think they were trying so hard to promote the show to save it. Because it only had 2 seasons, right?
Yeah. Looking back, that makes sense. Because, being adults and knowing everything that we know now and having the ins that you guys know and the information that you share with everyone, by 4 and 5, they were like, what can we even do next?
Right. Exactly.
So it makes sense. They would be like, well, how can we save it? Let's do contests. Let's give away a sweater. Let's give away a glove,
Right. So when you first saw this, you first saw it and it came out. What was the first episode that you see? Do you remember the first episode, or do you have a favorite episode?
I can't remember the first episode that I saw, and they all kind of just blur at one point. But I always remembered the one that was Lori Petty was in it, and I want to say it's like the third one in the first season or something like that. But it's a really weird episode, and halfway through it gets really fever dreamish, and it's like Freddy's hosting it. It's so weird. It's like Freddy meets Twin Peaks. And it's like at one point Freddy's like sucking on a crystal, and you're just like, what is going on here?
Okay. So in preparation for tonight's show, I messaged my friend and I was like, yeah, I'm watching Freddy's Nightmares, blah, blah, blah. I was like, I just can't get into it. And she said, you have to watch the Lori Petty episode.
Yeah,
she's like,
so
that's the one
strange.
you have to watch. So you're the second person now that's said that.
It's so weird, man. It's so weird. But you know what? And it's like, if you go back through the show and you actually watch it, there are a lot of really big actors that ran through that show. Lori Petty was on there. Brad Pitt was on there, I think. Tina from the character or the actress, I'm sorry, that played Tina in Friday the 13th Part 7, the psychic. She is in the second episode in season 1. She plays the main character's girlfriend. There's so many cameos, and then Jerry Stiller's in an episode. He's like some radio show host. The guy that played Hedwig and the Angry Inch is in the second one. Tina from Friday the 13th 7 is his girlfriend. And then Dan's dad from Nightmare 4 and 5 is the doctor in that episode. It's like they really kind of recycled people from Nightmare every once in a while too. You'll see it.
That's awesome. I think all these big names being attached to it is kind of cool. Like when you learn that, but probably the biggest name that's attached to it in the horror world is Tobe Hooper. And Tobe Hooper directed the first episode, and the episode that we're going to jump in and talk about, which is No More Mr. Nice Guy. And I think that it's super cool that it melts the horror community together. And so Tobe Hooper directed this episode, and this episode is the background and origin story of Freddy Krueger and how he became who he is, as much as they could tell in an hour episode. So what are your guys' thoughts on it? What did you guys think about No More Mr. Nice Guy?
I thought it was a really, really, really fun episode. Great way to start it. It set the bar a little high for the rest of the series. Because it's a really, really good episode, and to start with Freddy's backstory and history and how he came to be. We always hear about it, but we never really, really see it. We see it a little bit in Freddy's Dead, but I just felt like it wasn't satisfying. But it was more satisfying in the first episode.
It was. Because I think that a lot of people might have started watching it because they might have thought it was just like little mini movies with Freddy, and that really kicked it off in a powerful way. But that's pretty much it. But there's not really any ties to the movie as much. The films themselves, there's no Thompson family that we could see, and according to the films, they played a pretty prominent role. Marge had his glove, and then we have these random older teenagers that he's going after, not just little kids. Not really referenced anywhere else. I know that Marge says that somebody didn't sign the search warrant in the right place, and this one had to do with his Miranda rights. So there was a little bit of inconsistency. According to NightmareOnElmStreetFilms.com, which references New Line Cinema, this and Freddy's Nightmares is considered canon. However, I just find it to be an inadequate prequel. Whenever I talk about I want to see a prequel for A Nightmare on Elm Street, I want to see a prequel, everyone goes, yeah, there's an episode of Freddy's Nightmares. I'm like, shut the hell up. That doesn't count. It really doesn't tie into the story. It's kind of cheesy. It really is. But even though it's an interesting prequel, we could take that, use it as a starting point, and run with it. I think there could be so much more to it. But it just really doesn't tie that much into the films themselves, so I'm left a little bit unsatisfied, but it's still very interesting because it is a prequel.
I was a little confused in it because it's clearly set in the 80s, and I understand that it's like the jump off point for an 80s television show, but I think it had so much potential that it could have been this really great episode, or could have been this really great jumping off point, but it just, why is it set in the 80s? Like, it needs to be set in the very early 70s. And then, spoiler alert, after he dies and burns in the boiler room, it's like he says, now we're present day or something, and it's like, so it's 1988. Like, what happened to all of what the films were before it? I I love the backstory of Freddie. I love the seediness of like the parents in this small town, this white bread America, you know, getting together and murdering this, you know, child killer or, you know, pedophile, depending on, you know, which script you want to read. But I love the whole backstory of him. And I feel like they're limited on what they could have done in 80s and TV, you know? So like when I was watching some of the kills, like I was laughing because I could just imagine like them thinking, what are we allowed to show and what are we not allowed to show? Let's squirt some ketchup on a hot dog bun on a paper plate. Like that's what I felt like it was. But I had to take myself out of it and realize like this is not a rated R movie that's being mass produced. Like this is a television show that has to pass the television censors. And so I just was very like underwhelmed with it. Robert's acting is great in it because like Robert, I feel like he's great in anything, but his acting was really great. But the guy who played Tim, the police officer, he was like super like overacting. Like it just, I don't know. It felt wrong to me.
Yeah, and the daughters were so bad. What
it was like
Merritt?
soap opera
Was
level.
Merritt the one that was all like freaked out and spooked out?
Yeah.
Freddy's back.
Oh my God, I hated that. No, I hated that. Oh, that made my skin crawl. I was like, stop singing this stupid song just because they had this nursery rhyme that everybody was singing in the movies, and now you gotta tie it into some stupid warning. I mean, oh, I hated it. I hated it so much.
But see, that's the thing too, is that where the nursery rhyme could have came from? Like there's so much they could have done with it, but it doesn't make sense.
Right.
It's set in 1988. Like even the municipal building, the courthouse, like it's the high school from the first film.
I thought it was so funny that he had an ice cream truck sitting outside of his
what's with that?
horribly decrepit, dark-looking boiler room. Like, why didn't you just have a neon sign that says Freddy's hideout?
Freddy's bachelor pad. I did really get a good chuckle when he's talking to like all his tools and he's like, "Don't worry, you'll have meat soon," and like all these creepy like pickup lines between his like torture devices.
And then like he like slowly picks up the glove and then like quickly turns it over.
It's so dramatic. It's like a soap opera on Elm Street.
Yeah.
It was so over the top. I get it that people really, try to pull this off as like push it as a prequel, and they like give that excuse like we had a prequel. Like, no, stop it. Did you watch this episode? And or do you have like rose-colored glasses on? Because that feels like it's not that great.
Well, and I think what a lot of us do unknowingly is we put, we view things through those nostalgic glasses. So if it's subject matter is Freddy, boom, it's cool. I like it. You know what I mean? Now that we're older and we go back and we look at some things, we still love them. Yeah. But we're like, wow, man, like that was kind of like Freddy's Dead totally got shafted. You know what I mean? Like I totally would have loved to see what Rachel Talalay really had planned for the death of Freddy, as opposed to now, how do I make it look cool in 3D?
I would have really liked the Innovation comics to have been turned. I mean, bring everybody back, give a big bang. That would have just been such a nice wrap up to it.
I still need to read these, and I swear to God, every time I hear about them, it sounds crazier and crazier. I had no idea everybody comes.
I'll send you a link.
I need to read this.
I'll send you a copy.
Oh
Bam,
my God.
bitch went down. Yeah.
Super bitch.
Super bitch.
Super bitch. Yeah. No, I really do. It's a fun episode. I think there's so much more potential for a prequel story. Yeah. I'm curious what you guys, if they did a prequel, would you want it to be like this, but they do a really nice job? Would you like it to be a movie, a TV show? Like, what do you think would be potentially a really good thing to watch as a prequel?
I think if they did it as one of those like Netflix shows where they put up like a couple episodes every week or something like that, I think they could really milk it like they probably want to. And honestly, I think we Elm Street fans deserve it, because I think we're the most underfed fandom.
We are.
On the face of the horror franchise planet. Yeah, but I think it would be really cool, honestly, if they just did a Springwood slasher movie and put Robert, at the helm of it, have him direct it, have him star in it, and just let it ride, because he's old enough to be the Springwood slasher now. That gritty, dingy, gross-looking old man. Even though we all know he's like a lovable grandpa at this point.
Well, at the same time, I always wonder about that, having Robert back as Freddie, because if it was to be it could be a true prequel, or it could just be kind of its own thing, because based on what we saw in Freddy's Dead, which is considered core canon, as much as people don't like it, he's younger. And so even though Wes had pictured somebody older initially, we have this adorable little blonde-haired surfer dude who became Freddy Krueger. And so if it was to be true to the films, I don't think it would necessarily work if it was an older guy, simply because that's not how the films ended up panning out.
True.
But I know people want Robert back.
What?
No, I said, but I know people want Robert back. I'm not a die on the let's have Robert back hill.
I used to be, and I was like, I'm going to die on this hill, and I don't care. But at one point, you gotta put that sword down. Robert can't be Freddy forever, especially if you want Freddy to live forever. He has a really great idea about somebody else plays Freddy and everybody else's nightmare. So he looks personally different to each person he goes to. I think that's a fantastic idea.
I like that idea. I think, my personal view, I wish they would do a Netflix or Hulu series and do 3 seasons, 9 episodes each season. You get Robert back to narrate it. So he is still in the role of Freddy, but he's narrating it. He doesn't have to be on screen. You get it as a younger guy. Like, I am a ride or die for Jeremy Allen White from Shameless to play the next Freddy Krueger. I feel like he just has like a range and a look about him that I feel like he can pull off like a young Springwood slasher. And I think they should do just 3 seasons of it. I think they can delve into so many of the different backstories without ruining the films. Like, you can explore Taryn's story and what happened with her family if she's a little girl and her parents, they're all those parents are on Elm Street. It can be in each couple episodes devoted to each of them to show you how he became who he is. And then at the end, ended after 3 seasons, and the last scene needs to be Amanda Wiss's Tina, and she pops up on screen and you just hear Robert say Tina, and that's it. Because then it goes on to the films. But it's a way
tie it right in.
And it gives us more new content. It gives us something
we
great.
Need something
that like we deserve, and not
well, and that's not to discredit all the great things that fans are doing, because there's so much great fan content out there right now, films and things.
Why does it take the fans having to do it? The studios need to listen to the fans. Like, when I think of like Confessions of Fred Krueger, like, if a studio put money behind that and produced that, like, that would be huge. And it's just, I don't know, but I love this genre. I feel like I could talk it all day.
There's a part of me, I mean, here we go. I'm going to say it for the millionth time what my idea is, and it's just set in the 70s, kind of a dark mix of maybe Mindhunter with, I don't know, some kind of horror show. So it could be grisly. Maybe it's on HBO. Or something where they can have a little more gore and a little, just raise this bar a little bit there. And I want it to be a prequel series, but it does follow Dawn and the people of the town. So it has that mix of drama and horror, so the horror fans can get sucked in. But also it would appeal to the mainstream audience, because the mainstream audience, you also have to get their buy-in, and you want them to get interested. And shows like The Haunting and The Walking Dead have the drama elements in them So I think that would really, and it would feed into the original idea of having telling the backstory of everybody in the films, but you don't necessarily need to see people in the films. You just need to know these characters so that maybe if a new fan comes along, they watch it, they love it, they watch the movies, they'll get the backstory to, like you said, Paige, the parents, these children, and it would just make for a really cool show to see this town of these all suburban, so happy, oh so lovely, wonderful people be torn apart by this Springwood slasher and what it does when you have somebody kidnapping children and you find these children mutilated and just people totally distraught, and you come down to it and you end up being faced with the question, you know, is going after this guy, is taking vigilante justice into your own hands right? Which kind of ties into the movies as well of, you know, is this the right thing to do? Should you put him in the hands of the law? If you got the search warrant and you got him, is that enough? Or, you know, do you have to take care of it yourself? And as a parent, what do you do? And then watching somebody who's maybe pretty well put together as Don Thompson just kind of fall apart, his family falls apart. I think that would be kind of
you see
tragic.
Marge take her first drink of alcohol.
Uh-huh.
Like you see where it like starts to come from. You see the break and divide of their marriage and their family unit. Maybe explore the fact that Nancy had a sibling and that's what weighs on them. Like, oh, I love that, Dee. That's such a good idea.
You know, I have to admit, and this might be kind of funny to you guys, but I didn't ever pick up on the fact that her parents were separated, maybe even divorced entirely at that point. In part one, I didn't pick up on it when I was a kid until I went back and watched it. Even more recently, I was like, okay, wow, yeah, that's obvious. Even after Glenn's mom was like, well, you know, she's just being cautious. Well, with, you know, she's alone all the time now.
Yeah, I want to know more because it just seems like there's such a tension between Marge and Donald in the movie.
Oh,
and,
yeah, right off the bat, too.
And
It's
even
like,
Nancy
hello,
referencing
YouTube,
that.
Donald.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, they really have this. They've been torn apart, and it all, I believe, stemmed from everything that happened with Freddie. And so to be able to get into that, you know, the idea of the happy family, and then maybe it doesn't necessarily in this version end with, you know, Tina. Maybe it does, but you kind of skip to a point where everything starts to maybe go back to normal. Maybe somebody's pushing their baby and they look at each other and then they like remember that they were in this mob and they just kind of give each other a nod, but they try to cover it up and they try to go on with life as normal. And we're just this wonderful little town. It's like they talk about in No More Mr. Nice Guy when they're like, New York was even safer than this. And we know that back in the day, New York was not a great place to be. And so just making this town feel like there's something off about it. It's beautiful on the outside, but it's like American Beauty. You know, it's like
Right.
painted poop. It's not great underneath, but somebody tried to cover it up. And it's just going to end up rotting and stinking, and everybody's going to have to pay for it.
You know, wouldn't it be cool if it ended with, instead of with him going for Tina, if like it ended with some girl like flailing in bed, like making, you know, sounds like she was having a bad dream, and she wakes up to a little girl at her bedside, and of course we'll all assume at first that it's like a Freddie little girl ghost, and the little girl could say something like, are you okay? And she's like, oh, I'm just having a bad dream, Tina, go back to bed.
Yeah.
And the little blonde girl could be Tina, and that's her older sister.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole town is just filled with people who are very unhappy with what happened. Because everybody's so different. You know, the Parker family, understanding more about Elaine and Kristen, and I just think it would be so fascinating to see the underbelly of suburbia, because I happen to take great pleasure in watching basic vanilla people not have a perfect life. And I think it just comes from being raised in suburban Ohio and everybody trying to be best and perfect and judging other people. But there's so much darkness underneath, and it's kind of like a life lesson about, you know, they might be happy, like you see people on social media, they look so happy, but you know that their life is not that great. You know that there's a bunch of crap going on, and that really is what Freddie is paying for the sins of other people, and it looks so nice, but it's not. These people have done this thing where they've murdered a guy, and now they're dealing with the consequences. It would be fascinating to see that, and that's why I'm so tired. Please, anybody, stop saying that there's a prequel already. We know, everybody knows. We're just not satisfied with the prequel the way that it is. And if you are, congratulations. I feel like we have the movies, and I don't know if I would be okay with just having another rehashing of Freddie finds teenagers. Teenagers go, who's this guy? And then they die in their sleep, and just that same kind of formula over again. I want to see something different, and I do want to see it dragged out over a period of time and make it interesting. And you're totally right, Ryan. I think we've all been saying this. Everybody else is getting something, but Elm Street's just been kind of hanging here. Like, hey, don't forget about us, guys. We have a giant franchise, and there's jack crap that's happening.
You know, just for anyone that's listened, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, Paige. Another episode of Freddy's Nightmares, if there are any SVU fans that also listen to Elm Street Radio, Freddy goes for Mariska Hargitay in an episode. It's pretty cool.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
called,
that's right.
Freddy's Tricks and Treats. It's the episode 4. Got it pulled up on my TV real quick. Episode 4 of season 1. And
look at you already having it like prepared.
She looks exactly the same. Like, she hasn't changed. She might be a vampire. I'm convinced.
She's probably sacrificing children to Freddy Krueger. Oh, bless. But, so, what do you guys think? Maybe, okay, so if it's not a prequel, what do you think would be another option for a carry-on of the story of A Nightmare on Elm Street? Do you think honestly, that there's something there?
I don't think that there is. And I think that the Platinum Dunes 2010, I think, kind of proved that it's not there because it was so divided. Fans were so divided over it. But now looking back on it, like when you watch it, a lot of people are like, yeah, you can just clearly see it was put out just to be a cash cow. Like it doesn't respect the genre, it doesn't respect the films. So in order for them to do that, to do another film, I think they could do it. I think that if they had the right team, they could do it and it would be a great film. But I don't think it would be recepted because I don't think anything changing the story is going to make the fans happy. Like, you're never going to make everybody happy, obviously, right? But I think that if you are to say, there was talks to do Dream Warriors, like a remake of Dream Warriors. And that was going to be that's what they were going to do. The route they were going to go with the film, right?
And so tough to do.
Right. And if you do that, like, oh, okay, you might get some of the OG fans in there being like, yes, I love it. This is so good. And you might get some new fans, but it's not going to have that lasting or staying power. And you're not going to suck people in. You're not going to suck your audience in. And I think the only real way for them to do it is to do a prequel, because then you can't say, oh, well, see, Robert can be Freddie again, because you're always going to have those people who are ride or die for Robert is the only Freddie.
When Robert came back as Freddie, it just proves it. When he came back as Freddie for the Goldbergs, people were like, look at him. Look at his makeup. Is that what Freddie has become now? I mean, people are always, even if it's Robert, they're always going to have something to complain about. Always.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So I think that the only way that they could really, truly appease the fandom is to do a prequel. But I would love to see Freddie go on. I would love to see him, like how Robert says, like the Dracula. I would love to see different characters. I never felt that way either, Ryan. Like I always felt like a ride or die. Like Robert was always Freddie. But it wasn't
that way for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was only when I first started watching, when Dee introduced me to fan films. When she started introducing me to fan films, I was like, oh, there really is love for the character there behind this. These other actors can play this, no problem. Like, oh, they're actually really good. Oh, I can actually see them as Freddie. And I think that it just comes with the respect of the genre. And I just don't know how they could do it. I don't know how a big studio could do it anymore. I don't know if that makes sense.
I have a ginormous confession to make about fan films.
Go for it.
The only Elm Street fan film I have ever seen was your guys's.
See, I knew this. I was waiting for Dee's shock response.
Well, he told me too. And I was like, okay, is Paige going to say something? But first of all, thank you so much.
Like, no, like, this is so stupid. Fan films are so lame, blah, 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 blah. And, you know, it took my friends making a film for me to be, okay, well, my friends made this. I'm going to give this a shot. And I remember watching it, and it just, like, right off the bat, like, I'm not watching Diandra get dragged into a mental institution. I'm watching Nancy. It's like legit. Like the fonts for the credits were the same as like the Elm Street one, and I was just like, this is so awesome. And it was. I loved it.
Thanks.
So
we got to start a new series. Ryan watches a fan film and reacts with us.
Reacts to it. Right,
yes.
Right.
You know what? We kind of started that. We got to go back to it. You got to, Ryan. I mean, the Krueger films and The Confession of Fred Krueger are the two other really well-known ones. Blinky did the Krueger films, but he also had The Nightmare Ends on Halloween, which started out as Freddie versus Michael Myers, and then they did a sequel with Roberto, who was Freddie in the Krueger films.
Really?
And,
man, I gotta see these.
And in the first film, though, it's not Roberto, but then he comes in because they made the Krueger films, and then they did The Nightmare Ends on Halloween too, and it's just like all the different horror icons battling against Freddie, and it's just so much fun. I remember being in college and waiting for the Krueger films to drop, like on a daily basis whenever Chris was finished with them, and I was so excited to see all of them, and then of course to be a part of it at the very end. But
right,
yeah, you got to check them out. I mean, I love the fan films, and there's some great prequels out there, which just proves to me that somebody else can play Freddy, and there are different ways you could play Freddy. You could be a little closer to Robert. You could not look anything like Robert and just be true to the character of Freddy, which for me, depending on how they want to do it, I think, you know, it's tough when I picture a prequel, because for my idea, it's very drama plus horror focused, but there's not a lot of Freddy. So I don't know if a lot of the horror fans would be like, I want to watch this for Freddy. There's like not a lot of Freddy in it. So they'd have to find a smart way to sprinkle it in, because it's really about the town and Dawn and the drama and the horror of that. So it's a little bit more of a crime thriller plus horror, and you could definitely bring in Freddy in various ways, and you can bring him in more and more as the series goes on, because, you know, they catch him, maybe they're trying to convict him, and then everything goes to hell at the end, and then they burn him alive. But, you know, keeping it as the guy has to resemble Robert in some way, but also be good at it, or just take the chance and Freddy doesn't really look like Robert, but really nails that whole essence of Freddy Krueger.
Right. I mean, and you're right. I love that you say that it's an essence of Freddy, because it's this pure, horrible, enigmatic evil, and it's like not even just that. It's like the shame of the town that killed him, and it's like that's another thing they could incorporate into if they did a new story or a new series or a prequel. Not that there were 3 dream demons that possessed him and gave him everything. It could be like, you know, like he was created through this shameful murder of this whole town, and it created this ghost, like a scab on the face of the town, and they can't get rid of it because it keeps coming back. You know what I mean? There's
like the energy from their hate.
Yeah,
the energy from their hate and vileness is what
kind of like
mustered up the spirit of him. Right.
Which is also, so and excuse me while I get really excited about the ideas of suburbia burning in hell, the idea, and it could be like a life lesson, you know, like a life lesson to people who try to act like everything is perfect. That, you know, you got to be honest with your kids. You got to be careful in how you act, because they could have repercussions on them, and if you love them, what are you going to do? But also, you know, what are you going to do if you have somebody like Freddy Krueger around? But there's a lot of parent dynamic and showing the faults of parents and the consequences of your beliefs and the consequences of how you handle things. You know, because every parent, I'm assuming in Springwood, handles it very differently because every parent is unique. Some turn to the bottle, some get divorced, some act like it never happened, so we'll just medicate the children, and just all this different stuff. It would be fascinating to show the different aspects of parenthood and being a person having these faults, and hopefully people realizing you could see somebody walking down the street in your little town and everything seems so perfect, but you know, they're maybe not that great. They're probably trying to hide a bunch. Just realize that everybody is faulty and nobody is perfect. In this case, a lot of people are not perfect, and they, and that cost them their most valuable asset, or rather valuable, not possession, most valuable thing in life, which is the lives of their children and the sanity of their children and the happiness of their children.
Well, you know, and that's one thing that's so strange about the Elm Street franchise and the timing that it came out and everything. So I feel like abduction and kidnappings were like crazy in the 80s, and the Nightmare on Elm Street movies were all about, like, you know, do you know where your kids are tonight? Or, like, you know, listen to your kids, kind of, pretty much. So the 80s horror generation was raised up essentially as with these movies as babysitters, because the parents were busy. We're the latchkey kids, you know what I mean? So
exactly,
a movie series about a guy that kidnaps and kills your kids is now like the height of the media sensation in the 80s, in the mid to the end of the 80s, and everybody was obsessed with it. There were Freddie toys for 4-year-olds and 7-year-olds, and dolls and yo-yos and matchbook cars and board games and Nintendo games, and he was in Nintendo Power Magazine, for God's sake. Like, it went against everything that Nightmare on Elm Street was about. It literally threw the 80s kids into the belly of the beast, and he was kind of like our Mickey Mouse in a way.
Exactly. I want to see him before the Mickey Mouse. I want to see him before the MTV Freddy. Like, I love Freddy's Dead for what it is, but I don't want to know Freddy's sad sob story where he's bullied in school, because then I'm rooting for him to kill these fuckers, because all of us who've been bullied all know what it's like, right? Like, we can't do that, but like, to watch Freddy Krueger on screen, it all makes sense now, right? Like, of course he is going to be this way. I want to see just pure evil. I just want to see truly just pure evil with that intent, and then this town. Like, I just keep, every time Dee talks about like suburbia, I have it in my head, you know, small town America, where your cup of coffee is strong and your demons are dark. And like, I don't know, I really like that idea of delving into the underbelly of the town, and it could be done. Like, look at Gotham. Gotham was a huge success, and it had nothing to do with Batman. It had nothing to do with Batman. It was about Commissioner
They really
Gordon.
wrote it out too.
Right.
They really wrote it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that like Nightmare could have that aspect, you know, or maybe not even show Freddy until the 4th episode of the first season.
I'm telling you, don't do it. Don't do it.
Right.
It'll be so good. Keep that suspense. Because the other thing is, oh crap, I kind of lost it. Where did it go? Come back to me. Well, I also think that part of the reason that would make that really interesting, because people want to see Freddy, and you're going to constantly have those people who are just going to be like, I want more Freddy. Like, you know what, go sit down and watch the old movies. Like, don't watch anything new. Complain about it all you want. You're just super negative. But like, making the true crime thing to a certain extent, I mean, that's super popular right now. Everybody with that Night Stalker documentary, it's all they're talking about. Keep playing on the idea of a serial killer for kids, and just people would love to watch that. I mean, I loved Mindhunter. I'm not big into real serial killers. I like the fake stuff, but I will watch some of the serial killer documentaries. But like, pull out, you know, psychiatrists really go in and deep and delve into this research, and oh God, it could just be so good. Like, it has the potential to be a good standalone series by itself.
It really does.
Yeah, don't push Freddie too hard. Really push the story and
Springwood.
Yes, push that. Don't make Freddie the only focus.
Then give us those little fan nods. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like you're realizing somebody is Kincaid's parents. Like, oh shit, that's Kincaid's parents. Like, or like he, you know, little Kincaid's in a grocery store somewhere, or like the Krueger films, like when not to spoil it, but when, you know, Krueger's walking down the street and he says, "Good day, Marge," and she's pregnant. Like she's pregnant with little Nancy. Like, you know, those types of things. Give us like the crumbs, the little, like, to keep us coming back for
and
more.
That's what we want. Yeah. So, you know, that's all that we want, really.
Right.
Yeah, that would really be interesting, and maybe keep symbolism going through it. Like maybe like around the Thompsons, they always have roses in their house. Maybe they have the pink roses in their house, which ties into the rose trellis and ties into Nancy's pajamas, and those would really be cool. And people watching it for the first time would be sucked into the story and the true crime aspect. But all the horror fans would see all these little nods, and they'd see little things that make sense that tie into the movies. And I just think it could just be really good, and it could please both crowds. I really do, because a lot of horror fans, but who don't have their head up Freddy's ass, they will really enjoy just a really good story, because so many people just want good horror content, and they can get it if they do it the right way. So Craven Hysteria, if you're listening to this, I would like to pitch.
About to say that.
First of all, if you use these ideas, please give credit, and also invite Elm Street Radio to the premiere or some kind of event. Have us cover. We'll be there. We'll do a hell of a good job.
Yep.
And the soundtrack has to be good.
Uh-huh.
Let's bring back the horror movie soundtrack.
Who do you think would do it? Bear McCreary?
I don't know. I don't know composers that much. I know like Christoph Beck. I know like that type of composer. I don't know who would do the sound. I know the Stranger Things guys are really hot right now, and they're doing a lot of composing.
Things guys are
so hot right now. I could just imagine like
it would work.
Some 80s, you know, 80s
especially
synthie vibe.
Charles Bernstein with it a little bit, it would work.
Mm-hmm. Maybe Dave Ferguson could score it. Paige. For anybody who doesn't know, that is her true love. So
yes, he's a composer.
Yes,
he's composed a couple films, and he's a musician. So is Ryan Logan. Ryan Logan.
Yeah.
I
don't like to toot my own horn.
Ryan Logan, they could cast him as like the crazy guy in town who's like, "Be warned, all of
Crazy
these
Ralph.
sins."
Oh, I'd love to be the Crazy Ralph character.
Yes.
I would love to be that guy, and I get killed.
Yeah, you live. Maybe they'll make you a priest.
There's a stretch.
And on that note, this was such a fun episode, guys. This was really fun. I'm so glad that we got to do this, and I'm
just
glad
happy that it's back.
Yes, it's definitely back. We missed it. We missed Elm Street Radio.
Yeah, we'll definitely do more. 2021 is going to be filmed with a lot more Elm Street stuff. Hopefully we get some official news about what's next. If not, we'll fill in the blanks until we get there. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
Because we fans, after all, are clamoring for more.
That's right.
Evil never dies.
So Ryan,
tell
us where you can find where everyone can find you at.
On Instagram, it's oldman_Logan. On Twitter, it's the same thing, but a 0 instead of an O, because I got in trouble for yelling at 45. We'll just say that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Ryan. Gosh, it's so good to talk to you and have you on the show.
You guys too. And in the meantime,
whatever you do, don't
fall
asleep.
Asleep.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.
Bye.